Yes.
And we were expecting Bobby for the general meeting, correct?
He might be here. He just, sometimes people get stuck on the other side, so. Well,
The upside down.
I was just gonna say that.
is a new season out on that?
Yeah, apparently it's
Not
like
yet?
next year. Like, yeah, in 2022, which is
A
like in
great
a couple
show.
of weeks, but
What show are you talking about?
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things.
Oh, I never got into that.
Fantastic show.
It was.
Highly recommended.
Amanda, I'm now, my next murder mystery is now taking in Kashmir. So my wife and I are watching something in Hindi.
Oh my goodness.
But luckily, there's translation at the bottom. Otherwise, I would go, a dead person, dead person.
Yeah, you'd
Police
have a
will-
problem. You'd
Yeah.
need like a language translation app or something.
Is anything adjourned on tonight's calendar by any chance?
Mhm.
Something was actually just adjourned. Was it today? I saw that there was a change to the agenda today or yesterday.
Hi, it's Nina. I called in. For some reason, this link is not opening for me.
I had the same problem, Nina. I had to shut down and reboot.
Uh,
Well, we
okay.
have a quorum, so.
Okay.
Hey,
Let me try
Yes,
it on
that's-
my other computer.
All right. But yeah, are you? So you'll stay on the phone line while you try. That way we have everybody
Yes,
here.
I will. Absolutely. I'm not going anywhere until I get in, but I'll try
And
on
may-
my other computer.
Jaime, can you just rename that phone number with Nina's name just so we can kind of see who's speaking when she speaks?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I apologize.
Are you able to rename on the screen Nina's number to her name?
Oh,
You
yes,
should
I
be able-
can. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So we know who she is.
That's the 914, the 971 number
Yeah.
here? Okay. Sure. I have an email here from David Chow that has comments. And I'm not sure how I should deal with this because he's a board member and they are his comments. But I'm not sure, how do we deal with that, Amanda?
Well, I would consider that an agency document, and it's coming in well past the 24-hour open meetings law. I don't think we can consider them. He's definitely not a member of the public, so.
No.
and didn't somebody respond to his comments?
Yes,
So
Adam
there was,
Markovich. May I
they
say
weren't really a
this?
response to his comments as much as they were additional comments.
Part of
Okay.
it will-
Markovich,
Part of it will also depend on what you decide to do tonight with that application. So it may well get, if it's considered tonight or not, or if it's, something's put over. So,
yeah.
You know,
Adam is the head of the HPC, but
Right.
his comments, I think, functionally are public comments,
Yeah,
not agency comments.
well,
There was
Not-
no discussion about this at the HPC meeting, so he's presenting the comments, I think it's his comments, not.
well, he's,
As a member of the public.
yeah, I think that's the distinction that
Yeah.
needs
All
to
right.
be made.
Well, let's we have our quorum.
why don't you
We
start?
have a quorum of 4 at this point for this entire meeting. So actually, maybe, unless Bobby shows up, I will just kind of note right now that for all applicants who are in the waiting room, that we have 4 members, which is the minimum quorum. You should just be advised up front, and should you choose to wait on this agenda or to wait on any votes, that is your right, with only 4 voting members here tonight. So with that, I think we can open up the meeting, and I think I'm looking at the right agenda here. I think we have a we're starting with new business tonight. 2 Sherman Place. Sorry, were you sharing your screen there? And that's a new application. Jaime, could you give us the rundown?
Yeah, so the applicant is actually here today. I didn't get a chance to get a hold of them, but the application is to get a site plan approval for an existing property. 2 Sherman was converted from, I think, a warehouse with some office space to a warehouse with less office space. And hold on, I apologize. I added somebody here that I didn't need to add. And as a part of that, it changed their parking requirements, but it needed a rezoning to take place in order to do that. That rezoning came here to the planning board for review, approved. And so they submitted a site plan that showed about 8 parking spaces, a couple of which were not conforming and which overall were not sufficient to meet the required demand under the code. So we have reached out to the applicant to set up an additional meeting with them to go over the application materials as submitted, because they're going to need, at a minimum, a new referral letter for a shortage of parking spaces, as well as potentially some area variances related to the sort of the size requirements of those parking spaces. So they're not really ready to go. I thought that they were here, but I actually have not seen the applicant there. So I think that, other than that, that's kind of where we are. We're going to have to have them come back in January to discuss the application. So.
All right, there's nothing we can do. We're waiting for a further, for a more developed referral letter at this point, so we can't.
Yeah, most likely
refer them out.
Most likely,
Okay.
It's going to need a referral letter, but we don't have an updated referral letter to for you to act on.
Okay, and we don't have the applicant here, so I think then it would make sense for us to talk about this more in January. Then, okay, sounds good. So we can go then to 4 Narragansett. All right, yeah, can you just tell us what's going on here?
Yeah, so 4 Narragansett is
Is that adjourned?
It does say it's adjourned. It's not supposed to say it's adjourned. I think that's a miscommunication on my part. I was supposed to get back to Jamie and let her know that it was supposed to be on the agenda as an active application. However, I'm not actually seeing the applicant here. So perhaps there might not be much to talk about.
Because it's marked as adjourned.
Yeah, no, I see that. But,
They didn't notice.
oh, they didn't notice again.
Okay.
Okay. So then there it is.
Or Narragansett is adjourned.
They are adjourned, then they're adjourned again. Okay. They were adjourned last time. So essentially, just to clarify for everybody real quick, the applicant was doing some work in their backyard. They did some regrading and moved around some dirt. It looks like they were intending on putting in a retaining wall that would span 2 separate properties, 2 lots, which are under single ownership. After some discussion with the applicant, because they were sort of caught doing this work and given a order to remedy by the building department. So after some discussion with the applicant, they decided to not put in the retaining wall. They were just going to sort of kind of soften the edge of the dirt and seed it and move forward. So they're coming. They were coming today for an excavation and fill, but since they didn't notice property, they're not on. So.
Okay. So let's move on then to the third item, which is 246 South Highland.
Yeah.
And if you can give us the introduction on this one as well.
Yes. Okay. So this is an interesting project. So this is a battery and energy storage project. They are putting in a Tesla Megapack batteries. And so what the general gist of it is, they're going to put in 2 Tesla Megapacks. They're proposing to put 2 Tesla Megapacks behind the Stop and Shop over in the Arcadian Shopping Center. One sort of directly next to and behind it, and the other one on the other side of the drive aisle behind the property. And it's going to, buy electricity during the off-peak hours when energy prices are low, and then sell it back to the grid during the on-peak hours. It's a little bit different, so we've had to ask them for a long-form EAF, which they've supplied us, and it's going to need to be reviewed for seeker It's going to need to be referred out to the EAC for review due to the fact that it's west of Route 9. And that's kind of about it. It's an interesting project. Applicant is here, and they can probably give a better description of how it works. So.
Let's let
I
them
mean,
in.
they get a special
sorry.
permit as well from the village board.
Oh yeah, it also requires a DOT approval, special permit.
Yeah, we can bring the applicant in, I think, and have them just go over the plan here.
Mhm. We have Maziar Daleli and we have a Bernardo Borges. Apologies if I messed up your name there, sir.
You're on mute.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, good evening.
Yes.
Actually, we have also our other in-house engineer, Damien DeCare. If you don't mind letting him in, that would be really great. Okay. I think Damien is here. Good evening. Hello, everyone. Perhaps, and please guide me here. We can maybe start by me giving you an introduction about us, who we are, then high level about the project, and giving you a little bit more specifics. And then certainly you can ask questions and we can dive to the details. Does that sound like a good format?
Yeah, brief introduction and just spend more of your time just kind of going over kind of how your system works and how it will be implemented
Sure.
In this
And
scenario.
is it possible for me to share my screen some images as well, because I think that can be helpful.
Yes, it is. The only thing I would ask is that you only share items that have been submitted to the board in advance and are available on the agenda. As long as they're just materials that you've already submitted to us. For purposes of the public record, they just have to be the same. That's all.
Understood. Okay. So my name is Maziar Deleli. I'm one of the founders of IPP Solar. We are a solar company based in New York City. We have been in business since 2008. We have installed about 70, 80 solar industrial and commercial solar systems, mainly in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. Past couple of years, we have also put an emphasis on energy storage. In fact, we completed the first energy storage project coupled with community solar in New York State. We had a nice ribbon cutting with, at the time, Lieutenant Governor Hochul, who is now the governor of the state of New York. And so it was the first project we did in Yorktown Heights. I was going to show you some pictures of that installation. If you want me to, I can certainly do that. You let me know. So we have about a couple of dozen of these projects in the pipeline at various stages of development. And this one is basically we're looking to install, as Jaime said, 1 or 2 Tesla Megapacks in the back of the Stop and Shop. This is in the context of the energy master plan of the state of New York, where the state is trying to shift towards renewables and also using energy storage as a way to reduce stress on the grid, particularly in those peak times. And I think that will help reduce cost in the infrastructure upgrades, such as substations and higher energy demand charges that the utilities are constantly imposing as they upgrade the infrastructure. And of course, everyone knows about electric cars and how much demand for energy is going to go up. So the purpose of this installation is really to help reduce the stress on the grid in that zone of the grid. The energy storage will charge during the night from the grid, and it will discharge energy in the peak hours of the summer weekdays from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. That is the primary use of the energy storage, and it may be used the rest of the year as well under other applications that are available under various programs offered by the state. And so we have obviously a lot of experience with regard to all the different aspects of such a project, including, permitting with planning boards, with, all the fire department, all the safety aspects. And so we purposely decided to put this unit at a location we believe is deemed to be safe, and that will be, easy to maintain. We will be very close to a pole that is probably about, I would say 30 feet away. I mean, it's literally in the southwest corner, just in the back of the Stop and Shop. So we're connecting to that pole and just running a small trench to get there. And so yeah, it's just in the south, in the back of the Stop and Shop. And I guess I gave you some highlights here. I have some pictures if you want, I can show you, and certainly happy to address any questions that you guys would have here.
So all of the power storage, it goes back to the grid. This is not for local use, or it's kind of just distributed back out into the, the energy that you store when you redistribute it, where is it going?
The energy is going, okay, there are going to be two uses. One is it's going to, the electrons, you never know where the electrons are really going, as you obviously know that, but it's going to go to the Stop and Shop compressor, for example, when the compressor kicks in and pulls a lot of power for those refrigeration units in the store. It's just going to meet that demand at 6 p.m. in August when it's hot, everyone's AC is on, and you need power. So that battery storage is going to be there to meet the compressor's demand. Or when we have all these electric cars who are going to be coming and charging, and that's going to really put a lot of pressure on the grid as well, because electric cars, to charge the batteries, they need a lot of power in a very short amount of time, and those spikes are sort of met by this energy storage unit.
So it's all on site. The point is that this is distributed on site.
Correct. It's called distributed, by the way, this is part of the distributed generation program and the NYSERDA retail program. Other people have been developing utility scale projects that are connected to right next to substation. This is not what the project is about.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what size are you're proposing? 1 to 2 Tesla power packs? Could you, these are made up of multiple batteries, correct?
It's essentially a big one enclosure that is 23 feet long, 5 feet wide, and 8 feet tall. Okay, so you can see it's a very small footprint of 5 feet by 23 feet, 115 square feet footprint. And we just need to put a concrete pad underneath, assume, 5 inches, beyond that 115 square feet. That's really the footprint of soil disturbance. okay, it can be a little bit bigger than that, but we are not disturbing, thousands and thousands of square feet of soil.
Yeah.
Jaime, can you put
guess my
the drawings up? I'm sorry, I think we're having this conversation about locations. It'd be helpful to see the drawings.
My concern is not so much about soil being disturbed. My concern is about proximity to other residential uses, and also about the relative newness, or the relative newness of this type of equipment, and the use of lithium batteries, and the challenges around keeping them safe and keeping everybody who lives around them safe. So I guess that would be my greater concern, is that just lithium ion storage technology, while it is well established, and all the points that you made about helping the grid are very valid. And I think that, certainly that is going to be the way of the future. I think my greatest concerns are about, like, what are your safety plans, and how are those enacted? And what are the buffers around residential areas? What is your safety record in other places? Because I understand that, with batteries and battery storage, just like with electric cars, when you have stranded energy, it's just something that emergency response departments are emergency services are learning how to respond to, but it is new. So that would be my 2 cents.
Absolutely, and that is, it's very critical. What you just brought up is obviously the most critical aspect of such an installation. And we learned it the hard way, because when we went before your colleagues, the board of the Yorktown Heights, we just went through this, and we had to really come up with a very extensive safety plan, emergency plan, and so on. And I believe that those have been attached to our application. And I will have, my colleague Bernardo and Damien to discuss that. But before that, I just want to come back a little bit to the location. And if you don't mind scrolling back to the first page, or actually where we have the site layout. I don't know if it's, or maybe it's the next page. Basically,
Someone else is driving. I think Jaime is driving.
yeah.
Yeah, so you can, if you'd like to share the screen, you can. I can stop sharing, you can share, or if you'd like to do
Okay.
what you want me to
Yeah,
pull
let
up,
me.
I can do that too.
No, Jaime, you had the, I think Major is asking for the site. Yes. That's what he
That's
wants.
perfect. Can you please zoom out that same page? Okay. Okay, and if you can go up further, that would be great. Okay, so you see on the Google image here, the location that, okay. So at this moment, the proposed location that we have is really on the sort of southwest corner of that rectangle on the right side. You see on the right side?
You give me a second, I think there's a better picture from one of your submissions.
Okay.
I'm trying to find it. Joe, do you remember which? A
Yeah,
chance?
look at the sheet names. If you go back to the plan you just had, Jaime,
Yeah,
I think it might be is it the next sheet you're thinking about, maybe? No, the other plan set,
this one.
that one. If you scroll down to the next sheet, or,
It doesn't show it in proximity to the building here, which is,
yeah,
there is one that I recall saying that did do that.
Okay.
there was an insert on the first sheet, but it didn't show the drives. But it showed the building, but not the driveways. If you go back to that plan you were looking at and scroll up to I think the first sheet, the lower left corner had an inset.
This one here.
Yeah, the bot, right, that one there.
Yes, perfect. That's
Right.
perfect. If you go Okay, so you see we have two locations here, okay? And I think we can, yes, Jaime, this is fine. We can work on the basis of this this picture here. I think that's good enough for us, okay? So first of all, it's important, one thing that I want to underline here that did not appear in our application, but as you probably know, Stop and Shop has its own plans for some additional developments in the back of that store of theirs. And so, the installation that we have, we want to make sure that there's not going to be a conflict with their operation. And we are in the process of syncing with their engineers and make sure that our installation is not going to be on their way. So, but it is relatively safe to say that we will be somewhere in the back where, either the unit option number 1 or option number 2 are. Again, we will make sure that Stop and Shop is giving us their sign off, but I think you are right. Location 1 may be not the optimal location because of Stop and Shop. So we believe since this application, we've been doing quite a bit of more of thinking. It may be more appropriate to put the unit further out. If you can come back to that page. Yes, you see where location number 2 is, but on the grass area in the back, because if we put it there, I think we would be a substantially longer distance relative to the closest house. Okay, and I think we will be beyond 100 feet away from anybody. And just so you know, NYSERDA's recommendation for the setback relative to a unit is 10 feet. We can send you the NYSERDA model law citation, and that's their recommendation, 10 feet. We are way beyond that. I'm not sure if there is any precise number out there in terms of the distance to maintain, but we believe that 50 to 100 feet is plenty of distance for safety purposes. Now, perhaps I can pass on to Bernardo, who can give us about more detail about the safety aspects and emergency plan, safety plan, and fire department, first response, and so on. Bernardo?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to, Jaime did a good introduction for the project. I just wanted to clarify that we have 2 proposed locations, and we are not proposing 2 batteries at the same time. This might change in the future depending on how it goes, but they are separate locations that we wanted to hear from the town if they have a preference in terms of installation. So they wouldn't be installed at the same time in 2 separate locations. We have a proposed number 1, a proposed number 2. And we reviewed the consultant's memo, and they understood that, they described that in the memo, that is, we have 2 separate locations. Just wanted to clarify in terms of that. In regards to fire, we are prepared to discuss with the fire department. We have an emergency plan, and we have a commissioning plan. I'm a consultant to IPP. I do commissioning. I'm an energy consultant. I do commissioning services as well. And we have training that we work with different towns. This is new technology. I think someone mentioned that. I think I don't see the person here anymore. I think it was Eric who was concerned about the technology. You are correct. It's a new technology. It's a cutting edge technology, but it is coming to stay. We have to. Oops, there is someone popped a question here. Jaime, is that you handling this question, or should I read this question? And
Yeah, no, you don't. Just do your piece right now. We'll have a chance for the public to weigh in, unless that was
okay. There's something. Yeah, something popped.
A public comment
about. Yeah, I think it is something about sound. And just to clarify, there is virtually zero sound coming from the battery. Okay, there is a rating for it, and if you get the rating of that is rated when you measure decibels, it's something related to a distance. We can send if you look at the cut sheets, it's virtually quiet. It's virtually quiet. But I keep seeing questions here. Should I just? I'm going to ignore that for now. But coming back to the fire department, we're talking about training. That's a big component of our projects in different towns, is making sure we bring in the fire department up to speed. Okay, we have, I think Jaime already pointed out to the document that we have in regards to safety. We don't have, I saw that. Another concern, should I talk about a glycol concern? I think that was in a letter from the town engineer, some concerns about glycol.
So I want to, before we get too much into some of these comments, there's a comment memo from Keller Sessions, which I think is super helpful, but it's important to note that because this is an unlisted action, you're going to have to declare your intent to be lead agency. You're going to have to send this to the Board of Trustees. So tonight, while you can definitely have a public hearing, there's no vote on any actions you can take today. So just in consideration that there's a lot of things and items on the agenda, you may want to consider there's still a bit of a ways to go before this applicant, this application is ready to be voted on.
Are we in a position yet to declare lead agency?
Yeah.
Based on where we are.
Yes,
okay.
They've submitted a long form EAF. I think that there's some questions that we'd like to have clarified, but you have enough information to declare intent to be lead agency today.
Okay. Okay. And that's helpful. So, we'll obviously spend some more time talking about this. Before we kind of move any further, were there any kind of specific questions about the board that would color us moving forward? Really just on the lead agency declaration right now. And I think we can open up from the public, it looks like. And just as a reminder, per Amanda's comment, that public comment hold has to wait for a public hearing to be opened. That includes with the chat function. So
just had a really quick question, Seth. I can't remember from reading the materials. Do you own this property or you're leasing it?
No, we do not own the property. We intend to enter into a ground lease for that little section where the unit is going with the landlord.
And it's Stop and Shop is not the
no, Stop and Shop is also a tenant.
Right. Okay.
So we are just a tenant, like we would be a tenant just like Stop and Shop and all the other tenants.
Right. Okay. And I do appreciate you noting, because this board did see, I don't know how many months ago it was, but Stop and Shop did bring their proposal to do a lot of work in the rear of the property. So I do appreciate that you're going to coordinate with them. I think that's going to be critical.
Yes, and I just, just again, going back regarding the location, like I said, we are flexible on the location. We want to put the unit at a location that is deemed to be safe with regard to the neighbors, and also it is not in conflict with Stop and Shop. We believe that someplace in the back on the grass area, perhaps towards the far east of the grass area, might be the most optimal location. But we would like you to let us know if anywhere on that grass area would be acceptable, and then we'll go back also to Stop and Shop and make sure that they're okay with that spot, and hopefully we can make it work that way.
Yeah, and I would say right now, I don't feel like I don't even have enough information to kind of advise you one way or another. And I think when Jaime was searching for the right drawing, I think that was kind of telling. I think we can have, a complete survey that shows, the drive aisles, that shows the different buildings on site, that shows the, buildings on the adjacent properties. And, and if you want to, if you haven't decided on one particular general location that you like right now it's two options. If you want to, if you're still exploring both those options and you want to put that in front of us, next month, I think that's reasonable. But to document that in a way that we can, I think, see it more clearly, even some like ortho photos with these things dropped in place, what, think about the best way to show that to us so we can speak to that. So I think being where we are right now, I think that we can, opening up a public hearing at this point, I mean, is if we're going to be declaring lead agency, Amanda, is that something that we would normally
Well,
do
I think you
before
have,
making that declaration?
I don't think you would open a public hearing before declaring lead agency. And I think you also need to consider that since this needs to go to the Board of Trustees for a special permit, that process, which I don't know how long it's been since you've done that, they need to file, I don't know if the applicant has filed the request for a special permit with the Board of Trustees yet, but once that gets filed with the village board, then it needs to come back to you for your recommendation to the village board. So I think it might be a little preliminary for you to be opening a public hearing on the site plan review at this point. And maybe
Okay.
at this point, I would just declare your intent to be lead agency.
And how about the EAC referral though? Can that be done simultaneous, or do we want to wait for the village board as well for the EAC?
I think that if we have a full EAF. Did we need a coastal assessment form, and did we get that, Jaime?
We do need one. We have not received that yet. I'm not even sure if I asked the applicant to fill that out. So we just need that in time to get that to the EAC meeting, which is the first week of January. So if they could get that to us over the next week or so, that should be fine. There's one question I wanted to just have clarified, not clarified right now, but presented to the applicant. It's important to know how the pack itself is going to connect into the grid. Obviously, there's going to have to be some sort of construction work underground connecting it to wire somewhere. So whatever drawings do eventually get submitted to sort of update what you've already supplemented, we're going to have something that shows that information, how it's going to connect back to the grid. So that's one of those comments that I believe that comment was written into the Keller Sessions memo, but certainly that's going to be a key piece, and that's something that should be part of your submission to the Board of Trustees. There is no application, however, for the Board of Trustees that is specific to the special permit. So what you're going to want to do is essentially write a cover letter to the Board of Trustees and just supply them with the same materials that you submitted for the site plan application.
Okay, did you want me to quickly address the grid connection?
I think that can be addressed in the new set of drawings that you submitted.
Okay.
Now,
Amanda,
Heidi, you said sorry.
I just wanted to point out that the filing with the Board of Trustees for that special permit should really be done as soon as you can, because the code says that it should be done simultaneously with the filing of the planning board application. So I understand that you weren't aware that the special permit was even a requirement, but just try to do that as soon as you can.
Yeah, Jaime, I have a question. You were talking to Amanda about a missing file form that we did not know. Could you repeat what it is that we are missing?
I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying.
You said we might have missed a form.
Oh, no, what I was saying is that there is no such form. So essentially what you need to do is write a letter to the Board of Trustees requesting a review under whatever the provision is for the special permit, and then just attach all the documents that you submitted as part of the site plan application, along with the updated drawings that have been requested. So everything from the EAF to the site plan application, and everything else, just submit it all.
You did mention the coastal assessment form. I think that's what he's asking about.
Oh,
Yes,
the coastal assessment
yes.
form. Yeah, so if you want, you can shoot me an email tonight and I'll send you the coastal assessment form back. Or you can give me a call in the morning and I can tell you where to get it.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah.
There was a form that was missing.
So if you're comfortable, Seth, the lead agency, I think you're fine with, and despite not having the CAF, you do have the EAF, and I think you could probably refer them to EAC, pending receipt of the coastal assessment form.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think it would be, I'd like to see if we can move on both of those actions tonight. So being where we are right now, do we have a hearing starting off with, a motion to declare lead agency on this application?
Michael Aronson, motion to declare the board as lead agency on the application.
I think the correct motion is to declare your intent to be
Oh,
lead agency, because you're not the only board that could be lead agency. So the Board of Trustees has to be notified, and they have to either exceed or sort of contest.
okay, so
Apologies for the technicality.
motion to declare our intent to be lead agency.
I second the motion.
And let's do a roll call.
Seth Roy,
Aye.
Michael Aronson,
Aye.
Nina Aaron,
Aye.
and Eric Talbot.
Aye.
All right, 4-0 in favor.
Very good. And let's then act on the referral to the EAC with the condition of the coastal assessment form being provided prior to the meeting. A motion. Don't all you would jump at once.
Michael, I've already forgotten it. Michael
know,
Aronson, motion
you
to.
You can just say so moved.
So moved. So moved.
Seconded.
Eric Talbot, I second.
Okay.
A roll call.
All right, Seth Roy,
Aye.
Michael Aronson,
Aye.
Nina Aaron. Nina
And you're
Aaron.
on mute.
Aye.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm kind of connected twice, sort of,
We got
to
you.
make this work. Okay.
And Eric Talbot.
Aye.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. So thank you guys very much, and good luck moving forward. We'll move on to our next.
Just
Agenda item.
a question here. Do we continue with Jamie, communicating with Jamie, or how do we move forward?
There's a Jamie and a Jaime here. You can communicate with either one of us, but
Okay.
a word of warning, Jamie, who is here for my video, I don't know where she is on your video. She's only here tomorrow morning, and I'll be in all day tomorrow. After that, both of us are going to be on vacation. So for until after the New Year's. So if you are able to get everything, at least a call into us, please call us tomorrow and try to get the ball rolling before we leave.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Understood.
Thank you very much, everyone, and happy holidays.
You too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Good night.
Okay. Moving on, we're now going to move on to continuing business. 29 Birch. Jaime?
Yeah, so 29 Birch failed at the zoning board, so their application is, as of right now, dead, and they may look to revive it if they want to do an as of right project, but that would require them to come back for a BAR approval, and it would have to look different than what they've currently proposed. So
Okay.
application is done. The next one is 70A Croton Avenue.
Yes.
And so the application received its variances at the last zoning board meeting. So what remains for you right now is a revised site plan, as well as BAR approvals for the project. They've submitted pretty much everything that they need to in regards to the site plan. That was all connected into the zoning variances they requested. However, they did, you did request some updated drawings based off of the design of the facade. They did not submit those drawings, and so that's kind of where we are right now.
Okay. So we can bring them in, and they can just talk briefly about their site plan. Are you saying there are no new drawings, or they didn't respond to the drawings? I looked through their application.
There are no new drawings submitted.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
All right.
we have JB Hernandez. He's bringing him in right now.
Just to, we have no drawings dated 10/21. Because we just had a elevation in section, and it was dated 10/21, which is on there.
I have grading and elevation 1018. I think that's what you're talking about here. Let me just pull it up.
Yeah, there's a drawing that should be 10/21 that has the stucco colors and it has the section as the board required.
Jamie, are you clear on what he's talking about? Because I'm just looking at what's here and I apologize, I don't see.
Can we put those drawings up, Jaime? Maybe we can see if it's,
I don't have them. JB, can you pull those drawings up? I'm not.
well,
finding them.
if they weren't, it has to be, whatever's put up needs to be,
Right, that's
What
what
was
I'm
submitted.
asking. It's like,
Yeah, I don't want to sit here and say that he didn't submit them because I don't have them, but I don't have them. That's really where we are. So,
okay,
Sorry, I thought we had asked for some additional elevations looking
yes, and
west.
and that's what I'm talking about, the 10, Michael, the
No,
10.
but I think we asked for them after that date because we didn't find, I think the item that I see on the agenda from 1018 is the grading and elevation.
No, but there should be a drawing that is revised 10/21 as a building department and planning department comments. And we have a side view in section.
can you go ahead and share what you have, and I'll let you know if I've seen it before. I apologize. This is not how it's supposed to go, but
Is that, you see the screen?
Mhm.
yeah, we can see your screen. Yeah, I don't think I've seen these drawings. This was not in the packet, that was online.
Okay, so, but this, all right. So I guess this is, this is what I wanted to discuss today, but these were 10/21 drawings.
I mean, can I just pause for a moment, just in terms of Amanda, in terms of the disclosure law? I mean, how
Well,
should we be
well, none
dealing
of
with these
you-
drawings?
None of you, the board, have seen these drawings. The public hasn't seen these drawings, so it's really not appropriate to be considering them right now.
Okay.
Okay, so what I would like to do is to work off the site plan that we have that was provided and that we can kind of discuss and potentially, if the board feels comfortable, act on. And I just kind of remind the applicant that there's 4 of us here tonight, so we do have the bare minimum quorum. So if we can maybe just put the site plan up and maybe Jaime, if you want to do that from the packet. So this was the noticed plan.
Yeah.
And then, we've looked at this, we've referred this out to the ZBA. The ZBA has acted on it, and I think maybe we can just start off with board member questions. I think I also just want to note that right now, Amanda, should I speak about just the engineering review component of this, because we're the
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So just right now we're there just for the record, there was a question regarding a potential conflict of interest with Keller Sessions, and Keller Sessions notified the village and the board of this. And I believe that we are waiting for the applicant to respond regarding whether or not they were comfortable with that review. Is that an accurate synopsis, Amanda?
That's my understanding.
So just I think right now we can discuss this as a board, unless any board members have any reason not to move forward and discuss this. We don't need to consult right now until the issue is resolved with Keller Sessions. any board members have any questions or comment on that before we move forward? Okay. All right, so if we can have the site plan up there, which I think was there a moment ago.
Yeah.
So, all right. I mean, we've been through this before. If I think that the major change from this, this site plan was approved previously. And the biggest change that we're looking at, just to remind everybody, is there was a parking deck that was kind of, an outdoor parking area that was then covered over. It's now a covered parking deck. It became part of the building. That's what kind of, made it part of the, that's what made it part of the building versus just, being a parking lot. And there's this, public amenity or building amenity structure, kind of garden built over the top of it. So, from the site plan perspective, are there any kind of board comments or questions, should be discussing separate from the ARB? BAR.
So let me try to, I guess, clarify here. So
yeah.
for the purpose of the amendment of the site plan here, just to kind of settle, sort of bring back the whole reason why it's coming back. Essentially, this part of the property here, and let me know if you can see what I'm doing here. But this part of the property is where the parking lot is. That's now been covered by a part of the porch. So essentially, the reason they had to go get a variance was because the increase in building size that took place when they covered this section. So for those purposes, largely, though not entirely, the bulk of the changes were due to the fact that this stopped being a parking lot and started being a part of the building. There are some other changes that are somewhat different from before. So there's like an access walkway here on the side that I don't believe existed in the original approved project. So we'll go back to the original plans. That gives you a sense of what the difference between the two. So I think that the discussion around this is, there's not really been much change except for that. There have been some other slight modifications to the site plan. They're nothing that's a high level of concern, I think, to anybody in the planning department, but they are changes. So it's worth noting those differences there.
And if I just add, I think Jaime, and I don't know if it will make a difference for the presentation, but I think I'd figured out where the drawings are. They're part of the CVA package. The 1021 drawing, the drawing I should show you, they're on the website, but it's part of the CVA.
Okay.
In, the planning board.
I mean, with all due respect, I searched all the emails to try to figure it out. I think if they were sent to us as CBA, yeah.
I just saw it now on the website. That is those.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if they were sent to us as part of a ZBA application, they got posted as a part of the ZBA.
That's
so. But the site plan changes. I'm just trying to get to the layout here. So you can see here, this is what it looked like previously. There was an elevator, there was a stairwell here when it was internal, and then there was this kind of space here.
Basically, we took what it was an open air parking lot, open to the elements, and by putting a patio right above it, it became part of the structure, and that's what necessitated the variances. Increase the
The difference I'm trying to point out here is this is the minor difference here. So this, you see this doorway here? This doorway was not under the previously approved plan.
Right.
Previously, there was an elevator here. There was no doorway here, and there was no sort of door access to this area.
The door now is a part of the elevator room access.
So that's largely that, and the covered patio are the major differences between the previous site plan and the new site plan.
Well, and also the terracing and the landscaping in the back.
Yeah,
So there was,
So
it was, a wall was removed, right? A retaining wall was removed or
There was-
eliminated from the plan.
No, yeah, yes, so there was two different levels. Now it's basically one level grading.
All right, I mean, board members, any questions or anyone want to?
I just, can you refresh my memory? So now the patio that's in the rear, does it cover the portion of the site plan that currently that we're seeing that has trees on it? Or does it have a stairs down to?
no, it does not cover the part with the trees on it.
No,
Okay,
It covers the parking here. the
just,
back,
just.
the
hatched
part.
area.
hatched area.
yeah,
And then are there steps down to, is that area still landscaped? Is that still accessible for residents, tenants of the property?
yes. It's actually more accessible now because you can actually walk out of the building through the patio to the rear yard.
It's effectively on the
Before-
same grade.
Yes. it's
So
on
the
same
back of the terrace and where the hill meets it they kind of meet.
Oh, they're on the same grade. Okay,
Yes.
all right, thank you.
So the heart of the questions, the heart of the questions from the VAR application that you asked for last time were essentially that there's this sort of straight line at the top without sort of the kind of, undulation of the, the fenestration at the cornice that you did like about the old design that you did not like about the new design. You asked for that updated. Apparently those changes were made, but they were submitted to the ZBA and not to the planning board. So they didn't make it into the planning board.
I think we also had asked for some additional elevations that show the side wall of this
Yes.
new terrace.
And that's,
So
again-
those were the two components that we looked for.
Yes. And those drawings are, they are part
So-
of the VA packet, but
So
fortunately,
So you'll get those to us, and so we can review and have a BAR conversation at our next meeting once that's been publicly made available and once the board members have had a chance to review it. Okay, I think we can unless any board members object, kind of go to public hearing here, reopen the public hearing. So do we have a motion?
Michael Aronson, motion to reopen the public hearing?
A second?
Nina
Aaron
Aaron,
Talbot.
second.
Okay, thank you, Nina. Break the tie there. And any objections? With no objections, the motion passes. Is there anybody here from the public to speak to this application?
No.
Nobody's here. Okay, so nobody has raised their hand, nobody's shown themselves. So I mean, I think at this point, can we close the public hearing for the site plan application and adjourn the public hearing for the BAR? All right, so maybe if we could start with an adjournment for the BAR, motion for that.
Michael Aronson, motion to adjourn the public hearing for the BAR.
A second.
Eric Talbot, I second the motion.
All right, any objections? No objections, the motion passes. And then can we have a hearing to close the public hearing on the site plan?
Eric Talbot, I make a motion to close the public hearing on the site plan.
In a second.
Nina Aaron, second.
Any objections? No objections, so the motion passes. So the public hearing for the site plan is closed. And I think we can, we've heard about this. I think we can move forward with a vote on the site plan at this point. Can we have a motion? I guess before we move forward on this, are there any special, maybe this is a Jaime question, are there any special considerations that we haven't already discussed as a board that should be conditions to this approval that haven't come up?
In regards to the site plan, there's only one condition that can be dealt with potentially as a BAR condition. There's an issue with the proximity of the property to the property line right now. And so the construction materials may require a license agreement with the village in order to to build it because they may encroach by a few inches. The applicant's aware of this problem. I'm not sure that it needs to be dealt with as a part of condition. I'd leave that to Amanda to sort of opine on whether it's necessary or not at this point, but they do know that it's possible that they're going to need a license agreement, and they're already in discussions with trying to put something together to apply for that. They don't know how much of a license agreement yet they would need. We've asked for some construction drawings showing that the depth of that's something that may be able to be dealt with as part of the VAR rather than the site plan approval.
Is that for the construction process or for the facade?
It's for the facade.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that seems like a BAR issue. The only thing that I would suggest maybe you consider as an additional condition for the site plan is potentially whether it makes sense to, you know, just for, given all you've heard in this process with this application regarding the structural issues is, you know, make it a condition that they address any existing structural issues to the satisfaction of the building department prior to obtaining a building permit.
And I think that sounds reasonable.
Or I'm sorry, prior to lifting the stop work order.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I apologize. That is the one item that we had talked about in our meeting. So yeah, there's some open building department issues that that theoretically could potentially alter the site plan. If they did alter the site plan or any existing variances, then they would need to come back. So the condition is that they adhere to all, you know, building department requirements and you know, come back and if they're unable to adhere to the building as designed.
Okay. Can we have a motion then to approve the site plan with the conditions as just described by Jaime?
Michael Aronson, motion to approve the site plan with the conditions as just described.
Second.
So moved.
Perfect.
All right. And we'll do a roll call.
Beth Roy,
Aye.
Michael Aronson,
Aye.
Nina Aaron,
Aye.
and Eric Talbot.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. And so at this point, we'll see you back next month with the updated drawings, JB. So thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. Next item on the agenda is 81-89 Birch Brook. Just a quick update there, Jaime.
Yeah, so this application is adjourned right now because they need to apply for a tree permit. So they have not completed their tree permit application. They've submitted materials on the wetlands mitigations, submitted some materials on construction detail, site erosion and sediment control. But because they're going to need a tree permit, they're putting together their review of the tree inventory as well as you know, plan for you know, tree mitigation impact to replace the trees either on site or come up with another strategy. So we don't have anything yet from them on that. So that's really all that we're waiting for.
Okay, so hopefully we'll see something next month. Then the next one is 14 Water Street. So why don't you provide an update there as well?
Yeah, so at the last meeting, where the planning board landed was that there was a heavy discussion of the negative declaration. The document was provided to the general public, I believe the day of the meeting on December 2nd. And so it's been out there in the general public for a few weeks since that meeting. So today, what you have left in front of you is a couple of things. There's the decision on negative declaration. There's a decision on the parking waiver, decision on the conditional use permit for the residential above the commercial, a decision on the site plan, and a decision on, I feel like I'm forgetting something here.
Did you say site plan, conditional use, parking waiver, BAR?
BAR, yes, BAR. Okay, sorry. There has been a lot of communication from the public since then. So there are a number of comments. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 items listed here. Most of these comments came in before, I think, 4 o'clock today. There was an additional item that came in after 4 o'clock today. It was a rather lengthy email from letter, I should say, from Mr. Bennett. I am not sure if that one got on. No, it did not get on. But that has been emailed out to you. So in general, there are quite a few comments about various different aspects, whether that's from the seeker determination or the VAR questions or the parking waiver questions. And some of those comment memos deal with all of those. I think they are either in large part or entirely in opposition to the project. I'd have to go back and check to verify if there were any that were not in opposition to the project, but I do believe that almost all or all of them are, posing some opposition and in general are posing recommendations on how they think that the planning board should require changes of the applicant or should turn down the project. So normally I would read these comments, but there's a lot there. And I don't know if it's a good use of our time to sit here for the next 45 minutes reading all the letters individually. So
those letters are there, the ones that came in on time, and they're on the public agenda, and they're there for anybody in the public to click on and read and review.
They are. And anything that hasn't been, anything that has been sent after sort of a reasonable amount of time for us to get it onto the agenda, when Jamie left the office today, will be put on the agenda after the fact. So they're going to be available to the public to see, but they have all been made available to you. There may be, there's one item that there's actually a secondary item, one from Adam Markovitz as well, a short email talking about the historical nature of the project. So that was not emailed to you, and I'll read that. It's a short email. So I'm going to pull that up.
I think that Jaime, if we're considering him as just a member of the public, then wouldn't his comment fall outside of our window anyway? And it would just be posted on the website.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I think it would be appropriate actually to read David Chow's email, since he's a member of this board, after having thought about it a little bit. But anybody else who submitted it extremely late in the day, they're going to be posted as soon as we can, and they'll be part of the record. But anyone who's not a member of the public who happened to submit at a very late hour, I don't know that those should be read into the record at this point, unless we're talking about David, who's a planning board member.
Okay.
Yeah, I defer to the board here, however you want me to handle it. If you want me to read all of them or none of them or just David's, I'll go either way. You just tell me which one.
Jaime, we just lost Eric.
Ooh. Which is our quorum.
Oh, you've lost your quorum.
Yeah, we need to wait a minute.
Yes.
Shit.
Yes.
That's right.
Very well said.
Let me call Eric and see if I can find out what's going on.
Let's see what's going on. And it looks like JB is still in here, Jaime.
Okay,
Did you actually, maybe you sent Eric to the other room?
No, I didn't send him to the other room.
Okay. You're on mute, Michael. I don't know if you were saying something.
Sorry. I was asking if I was allowed to ask a question while we don't have a quorum. It's just about procedure, not about the specific item before us.
Well,
Just-
any conducting public business, you can only do that when you have a quorum.
Okay.
So I would just pause.
Sit tight. Should play some music.
Yeah. I don't know if we've ever had this exact scenario happen.
The
He
magic
is
of
trying to
Zoom.
log back in right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I figured it was a bad connection.
When you have in-person meetings, people don't all of a sudden just disappear.
I mean, you know, so I wish I had that ability. Sometimes it would come in handy. You know, just evaporate.
A Dr. Evil button, right?
Yeah.
An invisibility cloak.
Look,
Well, you can be there in person in the meeting and not really be there too. So,
Oh,
That is true.
Right?
touche,
checked out.
touche.
that is true.
But yeah, your physical presence does create that quorum.
Yes, that's true. What's wrong with tonight's link? It is
Yeah.
not friendly.
It's not.
And weren't Alberto and Bobby supposed to be here or? No?
Alberto, no. Bobby, yes.
Oh,
It's very suspenseful. We get to build up for our next discussion. It's just good.
well, when we used to meet in person, however many years ago, we'd take breaks occasionally.
It's true.
And
Does anybody have the
And
Jeopardy
people
music?
wouldn't just disappear.
Here's Eric. Hey, Eric, welcome back.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's all right.
I had to quit everything and just start again.
All right, so that's actually kind of a good, I think, segue if we wanted to bring in the applicant at this point, I guess maybe we're not quite ready. I know, Michael, you were about to ask a question that maybe this would be a good time to ask that question.
yeah, I guess my question was, there's so many things that are pending for us to review and potentially act on. Is there a specific order that we need to do this? Like, do we need to act on the neg deck first, or how do we do this?
Yeah, so the neg deck comes first. And then in terms of the land use board applications, so you have site plan, conditional use, parking waiver, BAR. Typically, I would say you would handle site plan, conditional use, parking waiver at the same time, and BAR last. So you can discuss those three land use applications at the same time, which I assume you would do anyway, and then take your votes, in 1, 2, 3.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll be mindful of the number of members that we have present tonight as we kind of decide what we're going to make our way through. So there's only 4 of us here, which is the bare minimum quorum, as we all just learned as we briefly lost our number 4. So I guess on that point, is there anything else, Amanda or Jaime, that we should discuss before we bring in the applicant?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so I don't want to get too far ahead of it. The applicant is obviously coming in, and they're going to have, I think they're going to state what they want today. So in order to evaluate your decision on the negative declaration, I think you're going to have to make a decision tonight as to whether or not you've gone through what's been presented to you based off of what was written by Amanda, in order to make a determination on whether you want to vote on that tonight. The site plan, planning board approvals are likely going to need some conditions. Some of those conditions are going to be to line up consistently with what's already in the neg deck. There are some recommendations that Amanda, Joe, and I have about some other potential conditions that you may want to attach, and there's of course the potential for you to add some more conditions there. So those are, you know, additional items to discuss. And then of course the BAR is a whole other deal, and I think that there's a lot of open questions for you to deal with there. So I think that the question for you right now is whether or not you want to have some discussion on the potential conditions of approval prior to bringing the applicant on, or whether you would like to have them come in and present. And if you bring them in to present right now, I'm not really 100% clear on what they would have to present on. I think they're sort of looking for commentary from you rather than the other way around.
Right, and to be clear, there's no new submissions since the last time we spoke. So last time we met, we were able to review the neg deck that was drafted by staff and Amanda. And so that's, you know, we reviewed that, we discussed it, you know, keeping in mind the meeting before that, I think was when we did our kind of really in-depth conversation, going point by point through the negative declaration, and really discussing any point and kind of saving deep conversation for those where we felt that there was, you know, a conversation to be had. And even before that, there was a work session where we went through a similar exercise and where we kind of, you know, set up, you know, what were those issues that deserved that deeper conversation during this public forum. So, you know, I think we have spent a lot of time as a board, you know, on top of hearing from the public, which we've done. I think every meeting that this has been on the table, we've heard at least some comment from the public, both in person and now several times in writing. So, you know, I just kind of remind the board of the process that we've, I think, pretty diligently moved through over the last several sessions. I mean, as far as conditions that we're talking about, I mean, I don't know the right, would that be something that we can kind of just run through the suggested conditions that you as a staff have recommended? I mean, I have a list of them here and I can just put those out there.
Yeah, Amanda, do you want to go through them?
Well, it's up to, all right. I just want to address a comment that is being made in the chat first. First of all, this is not appropriate for, I mean, please refrain from using the chat for public comments. I don't know how many times we have to say this. It's really not appropriate. It needs to be done during the public hearing portion of every application. And I just want to note that public hearings are a special beast in terms of SECRA, and we've had ongoing public hearings throughout the SECRA process. It's not even required when you're making a negative declaration. So I understand that the public has seen the negative declaration for the first time at the last meeting and now has had a month to digest it. No one is suggesting that there is not going to be additional public hearings tonight, but I just need the public to let the board go through its process tonight. Wait until the public hearing is opened. Please do not put any more written comments in the chat. They're not going to be part of the record. Okay, so I think Seth is perfectly capable of going through these conditions.
Yep.
That we've already outlined with him, Jaime, and discussing it with the board.
Yeah, so thanks, Amanda, and thank you for that comment. I just am noticing things in the chat box right now. So kind of reviewing the project with staff, I think that there were a couple of conditions when we get to the point, and this is just, to begin to open the conversation of what conditions we think would be appropriate to attach to the site plan based on some things that we've seen in some initial conversations that we've had on this project, and kind of breaking them into those conditions that deal with the during construction, and others that deal with kind of after construction, after the project is built. So during construction, we spent a lot of time talking about parking, and ensuring that there's that there are adequate parking tags and that are granted to the construction crew, to the developer during the construction time. And I think a number of 8 tags, which was kind of equated to the number of parking spaces that they would need. There was an effort to tie the number of tags during construction to what would be required, for the building as a whole. So it wasn't an arbitrary number. So the impact of the construction would be kind of tantamount to the impact of the building. Having a construction monitor is not necessarily in place, I think, but if maybe Jaime, you could maybe describe that condition a little bit more clearly.
Yeah, so I think that we internally talked about whether or not there would be a need for a full-time construction monitor. That's something that's never been requested of really any application of this size before. So obviously there's going to be required, review and monitoring by the building department to make sure there are no issues, as well as kind of open lines of communication. But we didn't think that full-time on-site construction monitor would be something that would be necessary, considering the high amount of costs and sort of the fact that that's not something that's ever been asked for on a project this size before.
Also, last week we looked at some of the kind of support and excavation drawings, and there's not any underpinning or any access based on the construction plan that was provided to us and the excavation plan that was provided to us. They're not showing any access onto adjacent properties as being required. But kind of given the what we've heard from the neighbors, and given the kind of nature of this intervention, we felt it would be appropriate for the owners to send certified letters requesting access to the adjacent property owners, and having those letters submitted in a way that they can document that attempt and that communication was made. After construction, we've talked a lot about tree replacement, so making sure that the tree replacement, as we've discussed in this board, is done. I think the chairman of the planning board would have final sign off on tree locations, just to make sure that there's some follow up from the board's end. As is typical with the development of this, we'd want to make sure that there's private carting that's contracted for the premise. Another condition that's been discussed, which I think is come up from a lot of public concern and conversation, is limiting hours of operation to the commercial areas, and looking at again, looking back at the code and looking at similar uses in other portions, kind of other areas in that area, to define what those hours would be. But I think it's again, so I think having the spaces open from 6 a.m. to midnight for general operations, but then for loading, limiting those based on the code for adjacent properties. And I don't think I have those hours in front of me. Jaime, I don't know if you can clarify just for loading and unloading, so we don't there aren't trucks or people. I wouldn't expect for spaces of this size, but it would be important to have that written into a site plan. And I think it was
basically we just want it to be the loading to be according to section 178-5B of the code.
Yeah.
To have it be something concrete that we can tie it to.
And I would then, thank you, Amanda. And then I would also note that it wouldn't be a condition, because I believe already on the site plan, we've asked for additional use restrictions that go beyond what zoning allows. So just making a note of that, as well as we're kind of having this preliminary conversation.
Right.
Okay. I mean, any questions or thoughts from the board on this to this point on those conditions? Then I think at this point we can bring the applicant in, and when the applicant comes in, I'll just give them. I just want to speak briefly to them.
We have Eric Churchill and Ron Steinberg.
And so Eric and Ron, as you're coming in, I just as I've been noting to all of good evening, as I've been noting to all the applicants, and as I noted before the meeting started, we do have a very thin board tonight. We have 4 members, and I just want to put it before you to see if you would like to have any actions voted upon by this smaller board, and give you the choice to have that vote made tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And we recognize that a number of late comments have come in, and we'd like to have a chance to discuss that at some point. But we think for the benefit of the community, the board, and the applicant, it best to defer the votes on everything except the neg deck, which we believe to be a matter of, fairly formulaic at this point, as the form itself in the 2 public hearings in which it was completed, to my recollection, the response in the form to all of the inquiries was no, there is not an impact. So we think that that is just something that we can, for purposes of moving us along, put a check mark in that box, but we very much want to address some of the concerns that have come in, even though we don't think they change much. We want to make sure that this process is completed with everyone feeling as if they'd had a full and fair opportunity to voice their concerns.
Okay, I think that's reasonable to start off in that area. I think that's where the conversation is at this point right now, is listening to some of those concerns that have been put on the record. So I guess, is there any, at this point, as we said before, there is no new information, there's no new drawings and no new plans, for you guys to present. Board members, do we feel, before we take a motion on it, comfortable opening the public hearing at this point to begin to listen to those comments?
Yep, I'm comfortable with that.
Yes.
Yeah, Ronald, I'm sorry, you had a question.
So I didn't want to interrupt the board business there, but
it's okay.
Are we opening the comments on the neg deck, or?
So, Amanda, as far as our public hearing is, look, I'll frame the the conversation to the degree that I can. I want to hear the public's concerns. It sounds like, based on the applicant's comments a moment ago, that the negative declaration is the one item that's kind of up for a vote tonight. I think that the application has been before the public for a while. I don't want to stop anybody from the public who has any kind of comments or questions that might inform decisions that we have, regarding, other components of this application. So unless I'm advised that that's, not appropriate, but I think that would be my want. So, and board members.
I agree with you, Seth. I agree.
I think it'll probably be really difficult to prevent the public from commenting on the applications themselves. It all ties together, but I think thus far comments have related to the neg deck, and it's probably appropriate for the public to focus their comments on the neg deck.
To the degree that they can.
Yeah.
Okay. So with all of that said, do we have a motion to reopen the public hearing on this application?
Michael Aronson, motion to reopen the public hearing on this application.
Second.
Eric Talbot, I second the motion. Sorry, Nina.
Any objections? With no objections, the motion passes. So the public hearing is open. So I would like at this point to, invite any attendees who would like to speak to this application. I do see one hand up right now. So Jaime, I'll let people in one at a time. And again, as always with these public hearings, please introduce yourself for the record when you speak, as well as your place of residence.
Okay, we have Mark Fry here.
Okay.
Mark, if you could unmute yourself.
Good. I think I've unmuted. Am I on camera?
You are unmuted. You are not on camera.
Oh, that's probably just as well. I'm looking a little ragged. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Mark Fry. As I think I'm a land use planner. I am doing this pro bono, but I've been working very closely with the neighbors. Let me first of all start by complimenting the board at the work session. on December 2nd. You had an open discussion to which the public could not comment, but I was very pleased to see the comments of Mr. Talbot, member Aaron's, and all of you looking thoughtfully at this application. At that time on December 2nd, that was the very first time that the public had an opportunity to see the proposed neg deck. And there are quite a few items in the neg deck which I find to be incorrect and substantively incorrect. So I believe that and I can get into those right now if you'd like, and I think I probably should. Page 1 description of the action, it's shown as a total of 30 on third line, 3,508 gross square feet of residential and 1,052 gross square feet of commercial. That is incorrect. The gross square feet of commercial, which is shown on the latest version of SK1, is 1,493. So we can strike 1,052 and insert 1,493 on that first page.
And Mr. Fry, as far as going through specific numbers and square footages, it is important to have that on the record, but just be mindful of where we are at the time, and you can certainly, and I know you have written letters, and if you've got specific concerns, I'm mindful of spending our entire all of our time going through these numbers, and it's kind of hard to follow audibly.
Understandably. Understandably. So if this is something you're prepared to vote on, in that case, I believe the comments should be made as of the record. But if you're not going to vote on it, I will send them all in writing. I had intended to do that. Let me also apologize to the entire board. As you know, there have been a lot of submissions on this. Today, I called Jamie Kane in the morning to ask to be sure what time I should have my comments in by. I received an answer at 11:40 saying I should be in by 12 noon. And so I called back and I talked with Jaime saying, gosh, if I had known they had to be in at 12 noon, I would have done them yesterday.
And Mr. Fry, I'm sorry, just to be clear, we may decide as a board, and I don't know right now, that to vote on this act, on part of this action on the neg deck tonight. That's a possibility. I would like to be clear that we're reserving that.
You're reserving the option to vote upon it. Okay. Let me also apologize. So I did my very best. I couldn't obviously meet the 1 o'clock deadline, and I learned just an hour.
Mr. Fry, if you could focus your comments on neg deck related items that you'd like the board to address, and not on apologies about whatever happened.
Well,
the public hearing is open, and it's best to make comments. There's a lot of items on the agenda tonight. So if you can focus your comments towards something that you would like the board to consider.
That's right. But while I appreciate your comments, the procedural errors in this application have been substantial. And one of them has been having the applicant come in on many occasions, which we've documented, that are not within the 15-day period that's required by your schedule. We're all very clear, and I've done this many times for each application. For instance, if I was on the one on the October, the applicant needed to get the information in by October 8th and did not, and instead missed that deadline. And it's been the same quite a few of these. So the procedure is, I think, the very first thing. I did not realize, if I had been told at noon or at any time that the comments had to be in by 4 p.m., I would have done that. But I did not know that, so I sent them in at 4:20. And I would like those comments that I sent in at 4:20. That was Mr. Bennett's letter, which I helped him to prepare, and a package that included a piece of the geotechnical report. That was submitted to you at 4:19. And while neither Jamie nor Jaime agreed to get them into the agenda. They're very important substantive things that you should consider before any idea of a neg deck, because there are issues in those that I raised and Mr. Bennett raised, 10 issues, in fact, that need to be very seriously considered, because you will need to rewrite your neg deck, your proposed neg deck, in order to at least acknowledge and consider those comments. As you also know, there have been about 10 or 15 letters about this, including one from the former chairman of the Historic Preservation Commission, including a letter from Jerry Wunderlich, whose family has lived on that street for over 200 years, including comment letters. A petition was submitted to you with the signatures of 50 people, including every owner of that neighborhood. There's substantial incorrect information. Those houses, as you will find, were built before 1866. In the applicant's information, you will see all of the Sanborn maps, and you will see that entire from 2 to 20, all of those were there in 1866. Several of them have been lost. There are a couple of been demolished and rebuilt, but most of the buildings on that street are from 155 years old. Now, as it relates to Mr. Bennett's basement, which is made of rock, the impact of any excavation material, as shown by the geotechnical engineer, says that while it may not be necessary to do underpinning, it is certainly necessary to do very serious supportive excavation. And it requires, according to the geotechnical engineer hired by the applicant, they will have to come onto those properties and determine the condition of those properties. We have a written statement from Mr. Bennett that is unequivocal. He will not allow anyone onto his property. It says, I will not permit the applicant or his engineers or contractors to enter upon my property at any time for any reason. And that's on page 7 of his letter today. Yeah, absent getting onto those properties, this is all predicated, of course, by the fact that instead of having 10-foot setbacks or 20-foot setbacks on every side of the proposed construction, you're going to remove 400 cubic yards of soil and rock, and you're going to remove a substantial amount of rock. I've seen the geotechnical, some of it is weathered, but blasting may be required, and it's going to be 3 feet from the property line where that blasting is going to take place. So the negative declaration is substantially incomplete and incorrect in terms of the overall subject B, impact on land and geological features. Secondly, it says in the following paragraph, only a small area of land will be cleared. Well, the lot is 3,200 square feet, and 3,200 square feet will be cleared absolutely bare, every square foot. And then 10% of it will not be built upon, 10 feet in the back, but that is a very substantial error. Further, as you've discussed about the geotechnical engineering report, that report was not submitted to the public until the end of October. It was prepared in April, and it was not sent, put on the website until, not even stamped in by your department until 7 months later. And now that we've had a chance to look at it, the basic response has been, oh my God. Oh my God. But the professional geotechnical engineer is recommending without question that the construction be monitored and that their baseline be established. And also has said, he has said that underpinning may be required. And that underpinning, if it is required, and I'm sure that Mr. Sermala, the engineer for Keller Sessions, can tell you that if underpinning is required, there's unequivocally underpinning required under Mr. Mosley's garage and under the 10-foot wide concrete slab, unequivocally. And the only way to install underpinning is by coming onto the property. But Mr. Mosley will absolutely, he was online here, he will speak and he will tell you clearly that he will not allow anyone to come onto his property to underpin his 10-foot wide concrete driveway, which directly connects with his 155-year-old stone foundation. So that is a very substantial problem that needs to be addressed. The tree impact, the removal, once we've grubbed and cleared 100% of those trees, that is the only 3,600 square foot parcel of green on that entire street. And it's been a parcel of green on that street for over 40 years. To remove all of the trees on that parcel and to suggest that it is appropriate to replant trees in the park a quarter mile away seems to me extremely insensitive. If this is actually approved, God forbid, then in that event, the total DBH should certainly be installed as street trees on that street. That's a residential street. That's the only green on the street. And if you remove 3,600 square feet of vegetation and 7 trees, then those trees, the total DBH, let's say it's 48 DBH total, that's 12 4-inch trees planted in tree pits on that street, not in some adjoining park. So I'll leave it at that in terms of the neg deck, except for item P, consistency with community character. You're saying that it's overall consistent with the Water Street neighborhood. Well, the Water Street neighborhood is the Water Street neighborhood. The applicant's assertions in many of their presentations that neighborhood includes the wire mold plant, that it includes Mirage Glass, it includes that entire Station Plaza North area is fundamentally incorrect. I wrote a paper at Penn State back in 1969 talking about architects and planners walking into a neighborhood and not even understanding the extent of the neighborhood. In this case, let us be clear. We are talking about number 2 Water Street at the corner with Secor to number 22 Water Street at the corner with Lower Main Street. That is the Water Street neighborhood. It is an historic neighborhood. It is 100% Black owned and occupied since just after the Civil War. So that's the neighborhood, and the impacts to the neighborhood cannot average in all of the buildings that are obviously much bigger and that are in that area of Station Plaza. And again, let me remind the board, I was at Station Plaza every day for nearly 5 years, just around the corner with my boat garage. So we'll leave the neg deck at that. And I want the other people to have a chance to speak here, but I would, based on all that I've told you so far, it would be irresponsible and imprudent for you to vote upon a negative declaration, which is facially extremely defective. So let me leave it at that. I want to also comment on Mr. Steinvertzel's letter dated July 12th, 2021. It's in the record. And
Mr. Fry, just keep your comments quick. We're trying to talk about per your comments earlier about the negative declaration. We're over 10 minutes into these comments, which I understand are important.
Right.
But just be mindful of that, please.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chairman Roy. And let me mention in passing, I think you do an excellent job moving all of these meetings along. So I'll take your good counsel on that. I do direct your attention to the 9 pages of the geotechnical report. Remember, you have the entire document. And the 9 pages that were submitted today are simply the written introduction, but they do have the highlights, which will bring your attention in 5 minutes to those things I would like you to consider. And I would like to address myself, if I may, to Mr. Surmula, whose work I very much respect from Kellard Sessions. If the board so desires, if you would be so kind as to send the highlighted copy of the geotechnical report dated April 16th, to Mr. Surmula. And then you can ask for his good counsel on the issue of underpinning of the existing process.
For Jaime's comments, all of the letters that were posted too late for this agenda will be put on the agenda afterwards, and they'll be available to everybody in the public, including the buildings.
I would
consultant.
just also add that the email with that letter was emailed to all the board members. So you do have it, although it's not on the agenda for other members of the public to see at this moment. It is in your possession. It's in your email.
Thank you so much. And in terms of the specific request that the 9 pages be sent to Mr. Surmula at Keller Sessions, will that be honored?
I mean, that's.
Well,
that's
I'm
on the
sorry.
public, yeah.
Maybe you can clarify what your question is.
When Mr. Bennett sent his letter, I actually sent it in for him, and I did work with him to prepare it. We had 2 attachments. One of them are the renderings, which you've seen many times. Second attachment was a 9-page excerpt, the first 9 pages of the April 16th, 2021.
You're talking about the highlighted geotechnical report, the one with all the highlights?
That's it, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, we'll make sure that he gets that. I would note that Mr. Tremelli's memo refers heavily to that geotechnical report. There was a lot of review of that geotechnical report, and in fact, a lot of his comments, particularly around underpinning, have been a topic of heavy discussion of this board, as well as comments within his memo. So he did see that report, he read that report, he commented on that report. And so I'll certainly let him know what the matters that you highlighted in particular were heavily discussed and commented on.
Very good. And I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get into a back and forth on this, but I would say this: in our view, we can remember that there are 3 parties. Your job in the planning board is to make sure, in general, that all people are good neighbors to each other. That somebody doing something on one property doesn't damage someone disturb someone doing something on an adjoining property, and that's your overall purview. The issue of underpinning, now we have the new information that I have not seen discussed, that all of the foundations on that, 8 of the foundations on that street are original, and they're 155 years old, and that is documented by material that is in your package in the GSA report, ESA Phase 2, the 965-page report. It includes the Sanborn maps, which I believe were sent in to you, just the Sanborn maps. I just have learned that the county historian is looking at that street to see if it's eligible for placement on the National Register, with 6 contributing buildings and 5 non-contributing. So, but when we're talking geotechnical, we don't care about that. All we care about is blasting next to a 155-year-old stone, dry-laid stone foundation. And obviously, regardless of procedure and protocol, if damage is done to those 3 adjoining properties, number 16 Water Street, number 12 Water Street, and number 27 Secor, the applicant is responsible for those damages.
Mr. Fry, just real quick, just for clarity, the applicant has indicated a number of times that they do not propose blasting for the project.
Very good. If they're removing the deeply weathered rock using drilling techniques, they talked about having vibration monitoring, but because of the unusual proximity of that drilling, assume for a moment they're doing it with drilling, they're using chemical expansion, and they're doing other minimally invasive techniques, they still have to get rid of 400 cubic yards of rock. And to do it right next to these houses is going to require extraordinary monitoring. And that is, of course, what is proposed by the geotechnical engineer of the applicant.
I want to know that the highlighted geotechnical report, by the way, is actually on the agenda already.
Okay, good.
It is in fact on the agenda.
Let me then thank you all again.
That was sent earlier today as part of a secondary submission. So there was a submission at 4 430 or something,
419, yeah.
that came in that had that highlighted report. It had the original report, which is already on this, and then it had a letter that you've been talking about. The only item that didn't make it is that letter. The other items are already on here.
Very good.
Do technical report.
Well, again, I thank all of the members for the board. I know I think you're doing a fine job. I know it's not easy. And let me cede the floor and let some other folks, especially Mr. Bennett and Mr. Mosley, speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. And so if this is if you are all in the same space or on the same line, just remember to introduce yourselves, each of you, as you come to speak. I guess they're not.
Mr. Bennett is here, but does not have his hand raised.
Okay, so
I'm not
just a reminder
sure
for any.
All
Yeah,
right,
there's a hand.
Yeah. Often Mr. Bennett and Mr. Mosley are together, so I will add them. Mr. Bennett, if you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? There you go.
There is actually an echo if you're with somebody with another line. If they could mute or turn off their volume.
Turn the volume down. Is that better?
I think we're still getting some. Yeah, just say.
Hold on. Okay, there you go. Is that better?
That's better. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, board, for listening. Mr. Fry spoke to a lot of the things that we and my neighbors and have been discussing for the last week, studying all this stuff like the geo reports and stuff like that. I guess you guys know that we've already spoke on this application before, and the nature of the building that he's trying to build in an area, that pretty much is residential, totally residential, pretty much in this area. Opening up a business, 24/7 access, no parking. I guess you guys already know all of this. I'm repeating myself. But, my house is directly next to this thing. And I do know about this wall, this stone wall that we have downstairs as a foundation that I just found out recently is over 150 years old. We were under the assumption that this thing was 200, was made back in 1900s, but actually it was back in the 80s, 1880s. The neighborhood is gonna, be totally, completely different, especially with no setback on the sidewalks, where it'll almost feel like living in New York City, where you can stick a house next to each other's with 100% footprint, buildings next to each other's. This used to be a village, a town, or whatever you want to call it. It appears that you guys have your idea of changing the whole perspective of this neighborhood. The views will be blocked for such a building. Sunshine will never shine on Mr. Mosley's house again. I'll look out at a flat surface for the next however years I'm here. You're going to change the character of the neighborhood forever. That's for sure. There's no doubt about that. With a business, because most of the businesses in this area, the restaurants, the bars, the laundromat, cars come and go. They come, they eat, they leave. They don't stay any time. They don't have any businesses that they run here. So everything, most of the stuff, the traffic you're talking about is temporary. You're talking about 2 cars per family, maybe, if they have children, maybe even more. You're talking about a business that's going to be running, loading and unloading on a street that we can't park on as it is. There's no overnight parking here. There's really, if I didn't have a driveway, I'd be getting a ticket almost every other night down here. As a matter of fact, I got one the other night just because I left my car out. The structure, you guys, even know that the structure does not look anything like the neighborhood, unless you're trying to change the neighborhood. commercial usage of this area is, you know, pretty much know that it's almost a no-brainer. No parking. And I'm pretty sure that it's going to really help the value of my house go up or down. You know, I guess maybe he's trying to move in some, you know, we're working class people down here. I'm retired for the last 10 years. I figured I'd live out my retirement here, you know, because it's so quiet. The reason I'm still here is because of the quietness and the neighborly neighborhood that we live in. And I was just privy to all this geotechnical reports, finding that there could be serious damage done to my house. Who would I sue? Because that's, you know, that's what, anything happens, you know, that's where we're going. And like I said before, nobody can come on my property. So you guys can, you know, you can tell that to the builders. And I guess that's pretty much what I have to say, you know. Mr. Mosley?
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Okay, yeah, it's good. Yeah, I like to speak. You know, me and Mr. Bennett are usually together, you know, in these meetings. My name is Clarence Mosley. I'm the owner of 16 Water Street. And pretty much what Mr. Bennett said, I agree with. But my main thing is, I feel as though it'd be, you know, a serious injustice for this, you know, to be passed, because nothing, like with the parking, there's no solutions. Nobody's come up with any solutions. We got this block is 2-hour parking during the day, a restricted area, so no parking at night. And even you know, the parking surrounding, you know, they try to make provisions to give 100% of no, you know, not having to provide parking is a serious injustice to the neighborhood, because we're all looking for parking. We get tickets if you don't find there's like a few spaces that you can park without getting a ticket, and you got, it's like 5 spaces, you got 25 people looking for a space to park. And changing anything still, you know, that's not adding parking, because the people still park in the lots. We just get tickets where we park where there's parking. So to not have to provide parking, you're still going to need more parking, and that can't be, you know, that can't be done here. And also my main thing is also, I'm concerned about the damage that would do looking at the, you know, geological report. But my thing, which I believe I put in my last letter, was that we, you know, listen to all of the other projects going on too. And you have talked about shading and stuff, you know, with other projects. But this, I mentioned this in previous meetings, how it was going to block every window south of my property. And yet and still nobody has brought it up in the, you know, in discussion. And the way this building is set up, you know, I will have no sunlight, you know, as far as it comes to right to the sidewalk. When I back out of my driveway, I can't see people coming up the driveway or traffic coming until I cross the sidewalk before I could even see anything. And, you know, it's like you're putting me in a cave. Even surrounding buildings in the area that are mixed use, like on Lower Main Street, where you have, you know, even 20 and 22 Water Street, or Lower Main Street across where the Maracas is, you know, there's 2 adjoining buildings right next to each other. Mine, 16 and 18, are right next to each other, but all the adjoining buildings have at least one side open. You know, 2022 has 20 has the south side open, so you get sunlight in. 22 or 36 Main, right at the bottom of the hill, has the north side open. Same thing with the buildings across the street. You got at least one side of the whole buildings, you know, of the 2 buildings together, one side is open. 18 is right next to me on the north side, which I have no light coming in on that side. Now, this building here is going to block in me on the south side. So, you know, I have absolutely no sun, which is essential to me because, from my kitchen, bathroom, hallway, all this, I get light in through that way. And that's helpful. I won't even on my front porch. I sit on the porch. We can see my neighbors throughout there. With that building coming out to the sidewalk, I can't see nothing even down the street from sitting out there or my back porch either, which I can see all of my neighbors' houses in the line that goes along through the backyard. Even on my back porch, all I'm going to see is a big wall of a building that's going to be sitting there. So it's basically taking everything, site-wise away from my home, and it's just so many things that still, I feel like haven't really been properly addressed before this can be approved, and so I just, I do thank you guys for, working the way you do and, spending your time working on it. But these, being that we're the properties on the, on each side of this project, it's a major concern to us. I don't want my property getting damaged for something that's just kind of oversized, because even the mixed use buildings, most of them have 2 apartments on top. Maybe there might be some with 3, but that's not even mixed use. But the mixed use ones have 1 business underneath. This has 6, and then you got 3 apartments on top. It's just, it's too much for the areas, for the lot, I should say, being that there was a 2-family on there. But basically these are just major concerns, and we just want you to really seriously think about this before it's really voted on, because I mean this is just serious, and I don't feel as though this is just the right thing for this spot.
I actually feel like it's going to benefit the builder, but it definitely will not benefit the residents down here at all.
Not at all. It's going to cause more congestion. It's going to, it's going to be, it's the things that just, there's no commercial business on this block, period. This section, like 8 to 18, but you're sticking this like right dead center of it. Like I said, the surrounding mixed use, there's 1 business underneath, not 6. It's just, it's a bit much, but I'm concerned about the shading, which, like I said, has never even been discussed. It hasn't been brought up, but I've said, it was a concern, but nobody seemed to bring it up. And, so, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for, letting me speak on it. But these are, at least some of the things that I can think of right now that, really just concerns me.
Thank you, Mr. Mosley, and Mr. Bennett. So, I appreciate, it's important for us to hear these comments, and I know we've heard from I think all 3 of these folks the last several times we've met on this. So a couple of points were brought up, which I think we can certainly use to discuss. Are there any other members of the public who are here to speak as we kind of continue this conversation?
Mark Price has his hand raised again. I'm not sure if it's because there's another person with him or if it's him trying to bring.
Right. I know Mr. Fry has certainly already spoken on the record. If there's another, maybe we can just ask if there's somebody else with him that hasn't already had an opportunity to speak in this forum.
Mr. Fry, is there anybody else with you to speak?
No, but I wanted to draw your attention. There are a lot of people listening, and many people are not, but you have also received, I think, 15 letters today from the public, and I presume you will read those carefully. It's more than 15, actually, in the last last week or so.
Yes.
And I would just ask that those people who are not speaking tonight would kindly, first of all, step to the plate and speak up. I know a lot of people are watching and listening. But secondly, if they're not prepared to speak up, if you would kindly read their letters very carefully. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bright. And I'll note that that Jaime did note at the beginning of this conversation that these letters came in and that they are on the agenda and that they are available to everybody to read and look at. While we're still in the public hearing, Joe, there's some comments just about the excavation process and the protection of adjacent properties. And I just want, if you have any comment or response that would help us as we move forward on this application, as we think about this application.
One thing I would note, the report, especially with regard to underpinning and the need for underpinning and or investigation anyway into the need for underpinning, was with the original project when there was a 0 lot line. The applicant has since pulled the building foundation away from the property line to make way for a supportive excavation system that would not require access to the neighboring properties. And one of the conditions that you have for consideration as part of the site plan approval is to require that the applicant at a minimum provide by certified mail a request to the adjoining properties for access to their properties to evaluate and do an existing conditions survey of their properties to have a record of any deficiencies or any problems that may present themselves prior to construction. The neighbors obviously have the opportunity to decline that, but we thought that would be a good starting point. Obviously, anything they do from a construction standpoint is going to be vetted through the building department as part of the building permit application process. If for some reason the need arises where they determine blasting becomes a requirement, there is a blasting permit and blasting plan process that the village has that the applicant would be required to adhere to. And that has a higher level of off-site monitoring, existing condition surveys and the like. So, as I said earlier, the applicant has indicated a number of times that they do not propose blasting for this project. The image you see before you now is their latest or their most recent proposal for their supportive excavation for the foundation. And as shown here, they have the ability to install this system on their property without access to the neighboring parcels. And the proposal is that this system, and again, this has to be designed, and that will be designed as part of the building permit process, but that system is proposed to provide the excavation protection, not only so they can construct the building, but protect the adjacent properties.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
I'd like to add, the geotechnical report, when it was prepared for it, as Joe mentioned, for a 0 lot line 5-story building. There were concerns that we had expressed when we were going through this with the applicant about how this had changed. So when we were looking at the construction logistics plan, it was really important that they highlight with some specific detail the various layers of additional review that needed to be taking place, and sort of the applicant acknowledging that if conditions changed that required more underpinnings, support excavation, anything additional beyond what they proposed, that they would have to go through a process, right? So they've said blasting won't be necessary. They've said underpinning won't be necessary, and we acknowledge that they've said that. We've also asked that the applicant be prepared for the fact that if conditions change, they will have to go back and come up with a strategy that has to be approved by the building department. We also set forth a schedule here for when the inspections would be taking place. So that's going to be done at the point when the erosion control is done, supportive excavation is done, foundation is poured, when any concrete cast in place is done, when the framing is done, insulation, so on and so forth. So just to make sure that we are ensuring the safety of the adjoining properties. I think that's, if there's any detail that people have to add to that, that's something that could still be amended at this point, but certainly it's been looked at pretty heavily and gone through significantly by staff, and has changed from the original construction logistics plan to now with a specific emphasis on sort of responding to the divergence from the original geotechnical report for one type of building versus what they had proposed in building. So.
And if, you know, as at looking at this, there are any additional requirements we wanted to put on, that would be a site plan, a potential site plan condition.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the requirements as part of the construction logistics plans are already, you know, items that were mentioned earlier today, some questions around parking. So we're already anticipating that some of that will be added as conditions to the site plan. But the CLP is referenced in the neg deck itself. So it's even if every single component of what's in the CLP is not listed in the neg deck plan, the whole CLP as in its entirety is a part of the neg deck by reference.
I know we have the applicant here, and we started this conversation with them, kind of looking for an opportunity, I guess. But before we kind of ask them to comment on anything that they feel they may want to before we move forward, is there any comments on the board from what we've heard? Does anyone want to respond to any of the comments that were just made? Specifically within, you know, kind of even as a board, I think, you know, we'll try to mostly frame our kind of comments as we're looking specifically at bringing closure to the negative declaration process potentially.
Can I ask a question about the type of comments that you're looking to that you're soliciting? I mean, are you asking us to respond to comments that were made by the public, or are you asking us to respond to comments made by staff?
Yeah, I mean, it's either. But you know, if anything that was just brought up, you know, obviously, when I was listening to the comments, I was attending to a lot of the geotechnical comments, which is why I brought that up at the end. If there's anything that you heard in there that's pertinent to this conversation that I didn't just bring up, or, you know, that staff didn't just bring up, that you guys wanted to be said.
You know, and if I could add some additional guidance to this, at the beginning of this discussion today, Mr. Steinbruzel mentioned that they're asking that the board defer on any sort of planning board stuff. So really focused in questions on the neg deck would be preferable. You know, obviously any questions you want to ask are fine from a staff perspective, but it'd be helpful, I think, to us if we could keep those questions focused to the neg deck, the understanding that you're going to be coming back next month. Under any circumstances, you'll be coming back next month to deal with the discussion. So.
Okay, I think I'm good at this point.
I had just wondered, Amanda, whether you had any comments on Mr. Fry's comments on the neg deck.
Well, let me see. I don't think that from a procedural standpoint, there's any procedural problems with how you have moved through this process. I think you've been more than accommodating in terms of your receiving public comments and being responsive in terms of the public's concerns. I think it's important to remember that a lot of the concerns that have been raised are site plan concerns, and you really need to take that into consideration. You know, we've gone through the neg deck process, and you understand that you did the analysis of whether impacts are, you know, no or small, or, you know, moderate or large. So the neg deck process really focuses on environmental impacts. And there are lots of other issues you could potentially discuss in the context of site plan review, of conditional use permit review, that really are not, you know, appropriate, so to speak, in the context of a seeker review. You can talk about them, but they might not rise to the level of potentially making you go to a pause deck. So I really don't think that as long as, you know, my more technical counterparts agree with me, that being Kellard, Sessions, and Jaime, I think that, you know, your determinations on all of the neg deck issues have been made based on your advice from your consultants and all of the information you have in the record. You know, unless they disagree, I think that the neg deck is totally relevant. And I really would hope that Mr. Fry would stop writing comments in the chat. It's really not appropriate.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that there are requirements under seeker that you reviewed pretty intently in making your determinations about whether they were, you know, small to no impact or large impact. And so there were a few different comments. One particular comment was about the definition of you know, fitting into the context of the neighborhood. And so I think that from the lay perspective, people may feel like, well, this block is the neighborhood, but from seeker's perspective, that's not what matters. So you're not in a position to define neighborhood here. You're in a position to make a determination based off of the guidelines that are given to you via seeker, and those were, you know, directly pulled from the code. We literally opened up the code and read directly from the code, and you made your determination and decision based off of what the code says you can evaluate and what you can look at. And
meaning the seeker handbook and workbooks, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And so it's important to understand that that is the process that you went through. Even if there may be some disagreement about, you know, what people believe the neighborhood is. I don't dispute that to most people, their neighborhood is their block. But unfortunately, that's not what seeker defines as neighborhood context.
And we actually we had that specific conversation. I mean, we spoke about that at length on a couple of different occasions in terms of how we define neighborhood. You know, this was I think something we spent attention and put a lot of thought into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, there were other comments that were made in a letter earlier today talking about sort of the architectural guidelines. And so the architectural guidelines are not part of the code in as much as the applicant is not required to adhere to the architectural guidelines. Rather, they're required to adhere to the zoning code, right? And so questions about whether or not this is zoning compliant, I think have been largely answered, right? So they are able to apply for something that's been presented. And so that's what's been evaluated and reviewed. The comments, I think, from the community about whether or not they're appropriate for the neighborhood, unfortunately, are not comments that you're able to address. The zoning and how the zoning code is written, appropriate or not, is something that is in the hands of the Board of Trustees. And so what's in front of you is an application and a neg deck that you have to make a decision based off of the parameters which you have the ability to make that decision. So again, you know, with the understanding we're only talking about the seeker determination right now in the neg deck. I think that, you know, you've been asked to review based on the criteria that you're able to look at things. And that's kind of the very slow process, which to date, for the 2 years that I've been here, I have never gone through a process that was more, detailed with the board than you did on that particular application. No other application did you sit and go through them item by item the way that you did here. So.
I think the clarifications, Jaime, that you and Amanda both gave are very helpful with respect to the context of what we're approving with the neg deck if we decide to go ahead and approve it. It's very helpful. Thank you.
This is Eric Talbot. I would agree. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, no, it's been a long process. I think, if I'll just remind everyone a couple of things. Number one, we are still in a public hearing. And so it may be, I actually see a couple of hands that are up right now. There are folks that we have heard from already. We are in a public hearing. Because those hands are up and because we're having this conversation, if there's new information or new people, I think it would be reasonable, but I think if we could, because we've heard from these people, if we could limit any comments, if they're just additive to what was already said to 1 minute or less, just so you can get your point in. I do see 2 hands up. Like I said, we are still in a public hearing.
All right, we have Mark Fry here.
Okay, thank you, and I'll be very brief. As I sent you by text, first of all, the geotechnical report was not updated to reflect the new proposal. We have a CLP based on an old geotechnical report. The geotechnical report has to be updated to include the new proposed building plans. The geotechnical report has not been updated. It must be updated. Secondly, in terms of the drafting of the proposed neg deck, the first time we heard a reading of the proposed neg deck was on December 2nd at the work session, but we were not able to comment on the proposed language on the proposed neg deck on December 2nd because it was a work session. So even though the board may have reached a quote determination as to the language of the SECRA proposed neg deck, that's a violation of the basic public meetings law in terms of reaching a determination on that proposed language without the public having an opportunity to speak. Tonight, we do have an opportunity to speak on that proposed language for the first time. So I just want to make that clear from a procedural point of view. Thank you.
Mr. Fry, can you explain exactly what you're talking about with respect to what sort of a violation you're referring to?
I'm happy to. As you know, boards can, if there are submissions that are late, for whatever reason, if the final language of a proposed document has not been in the hands of the public for 10 days, the board cannot vote upon it. I've already pointed out, for instance, that the square footage is wrong. And this is the first time I've had an opportunity to point that out publicly. And on the other things, we can quibble about the other items. I will send you a memo with about 8 items that are simply wrong in the neg deck. But remember, this is my first legal opportunity to address those items tonight. And I will be happy to send you that memo. But certainly the issue of community character is included in SECRA. You have made a proposed language under consistency with community character, a proposed language on consistency with community plan, but you haven't come up with the final language on that. And I suggest you do not do so until you correct that. The issue of neighborhood is not something that's purely voluntary. There are ways of determining where one neighborhood ends and another neighborhood begins. And that has been addressed. There are serious errors in the applicant's materials that I'm addressing for the first time. And many of the letters you've received, if not all of them, tell you very clearly that that is a discrete neighborhood and it has to be treated as such. So the language and I follow the SECRA handbook, the SECRA regulations, just as everyone does, and the open meetings law. But in my experience, boards need to have a final document in the hands, proposed final document in the hands of the public 10 days before the meeting in order to vote upon it. You've already been informed that it cannot be passed as is without having substantial errors. If you agree to pass it with substantial errors in it, you're going to give us instant access to the Article 78 proceeding in order.
No, that's incorrect. Thank
on
you.
a procedural, no, once you have voluntarily agreed to open the process under SECRA, which you did not have to do, but once you've done that, you can't create your own set of rules.
I'm not creating my own set of rules. I'm very aware of what the rules are, but I appreciate your input.
Yeah,
Mr. Fry, thank you for your comments, and we'll certainly let Amanda describe the process. She's the professional who we rely on to describe the SECRA process and shepherd us through there. But we do appreciate your comments. I see that there, for the sake of time, I do see that there is one other hand. It seems Mr. Bennett's hand. And as I had mentioned to Mr. Fry, Mr. Bennett, I know you have already spoken, but if you would like to respond,
I just want to ask, a question, if you don't mind. I know you guys have talked about the parking problem. Have you actually solved that parking problem? I'd like to know what it is.
So-
And go ahead, Amanda.
So, Mr. Bennett, we fully understand that from your giving this board your testimony and from the board hearing multiple applications in that area of the village that parking is a problem. It's really not for this board to address that problem. It's a legislative issue for the Board of Trustees to address in a more global perspective. This board is really constrained by the existing language in the zoning code. The zoning code, says what it says. This board has to interpret it and apply it as it's written. The parking waiver language, what it says is if an applicant meets all 4 of the waiver criteria, the board doesn't have discretion whether or not to grant a waiver. It's the way it is currently. In order to come up with more global solutions, it's up to the village's legislative body, which, as I said, is the Board of Trustees, to address bigger solutions. And so that would be the forum if you would want to discuss bigger ideas on how to address these problems. I know that this board in their last meeting on December 2nd has discussed taking some of these problems that they've noticed in your neighborhood in the SPN district and actually addressing them in a letter to the Board of Trustees because they see that there are problems with the zoning and they want to bring it to the Board of Trustees' attention. But you're also free to do that by going to the Board of Trustees yourself. But it's really not this board. This board does not have the authority to come up with those sorts of solutions.
So you can create a negative resolution based on just what you have now?
This, for purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which is just looking at the environmental impacts of this one project, all the board is dealing with right now is looking at the environmental impacts of this one project. So that's the negative declaration that we're referring to, is whether there will be significant adverse environmental impacts related to this one proposed project.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand, Mr. Bennett, that significant there's a legal definition of what significant means under the state statute. It doesn't mean that there will be no negative impact to you and your neighbor. It's not even with a negative declaration, it's a declaration that there will not be a significant negative environmental impact according to how seeker views that threshold. But it's not to say that this is something that you and your neighbors would consider as a good project. That's not what seeker is looking to determine.
Right.
Okay, well, a thought crossed my mind between Mr. Clarence's houses. He'll have moss growing on both sides of his house because he'll have no sunshine. I'm saying that's pretty negative.
I mean, and well, not just that, but even with the parking, still, I mean, if this project, one project needs X amount of spaces, and you get a waiver for not to have to provide for 100%, that's a large impact. And pour down here, that's a large impact because you got they needed 12 spaces and something like that, or 9, whatever. But there's 9 legal spaces on the whole block, so that's gonna make a large impact as far as it goes.
Yeah, and gentlemen, as Amanda just pointed out, we are listening to these concerns in the context of the SECRA decision that we're faced with, kind of before we even think about anything else, right? Because that's the first step before we can even talk site plan, before we can talk, some of these other items. That's what we're looking at, and we're not.
Okay. Yeah, we appreciate that. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right. Well, this is still an open application. I think at this point it would be appropriate to adjourn the public hearing if folks on the board agree. And if they do, if I could have a motion to adjourn the public hearing. And before we do that, Amanda, I just want to be clear that adjourning the public hearing is, we're the only decision we can even think about tonight is secret based on the conversation we had before we opened the public hearing.
So are you
the
adjourning
applicant.
the public hearing on secret?
So can we bifurcate, adjourn on the land use issues
Oh,
and
okay.
close on secret?
I wasn't
And-
sure what you were doing.
Yeah, well, and I was actually asking the question in terms of.
Okay.
poorly answered the
Yeah,
question.
my understanding at this point, up to this point, was that we were really just having public hearings on secret. But so yes, just go ahead and say you're gonna close or whatever you're gonna do with regard to secret, and then yes, bifurcate. Go ahead and do that.
Okay, that's fine. And board members, I would want your, this would be a group decision. So if that's the way we're feeling right now, if we feel like we've heard everything, and I guess maybe just to be clear, Amanda, per Mr. Fry's comments regarding the public notification on this, just can you clarify our responsibility?
We had a draft negative declaration available to the public at the December 2nd meeting. Your board at that meeting had 0 comments. Do we? Jaime, can you just, okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jaime.
The board had 0 comments and changes on that negative declaration. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was final at that point. It's been available to the public for the entire time, I'm not going to respond to that. It's been available this entire time between the 2nd and this meeting. And just for the public's benefit, for the record's benefit, that negative declaration was it memorialized the board's extremely detailed discussion, which took place in public sessions prior to that work session, of going through every single portion of the Part 2 EAF. So it's simply, like I said, a memorialization of the discussion that took place. I believe the board opened public hearings during those sessions. There was one work session where public hearings were not opened on this portion of 14 water. So to the extent that there's an argument that the public has not been a part of this neg deck process, I would take great issue with that. I think the public has been very involved. And I even think that Mr. Mosley and Mr. Bennett acknowledged that they've had many times to come and speak to your board. So Mr. Fry has had that document available since December 2nd to submit comments.
And Amanda, that document is the same document that if we were to take a vote on that would be approved. It's the same document.
I think it's important to note that, like, you have made secret determinations in the past where there was no negative declaration text that was provided to the public in advance of the meeting. You made the decision and the neg deck was written after the fact. There's no obligation for that to be actually written in advance of the meeting. You can just make your determinations, have your discussion, do it on the record, and then memorialize it after the fact. It does not have to be provided prior to the fact. If there are errors, such as those that were pointed out by Mr. Fry, I mean, that's super helpful for us to know, because they can go back and be fixed. But
and to the extent, sorry, Jaime.
Well, no, I was just going to say that the nature of his comments, especially around the size of the property, those are in the materials that have been submitted and are on the record as well. So the neg deck refers specifically to the record. So I think that Amanda did a really good job of getting 99.9% of the details correct. If there are changes that we need to make to fix it, then that's fine. But it does clearly reflect the record that was provided.
Right. Yeah, I apologize for my administrative errors. I have a problem, I guess, with getting details like that correct. But those are administrative minor errors. The errors that Mr. Fry is characterizing as major errors, such as what we call the neighborhood, I would argue that's a subjective, characterization on his part. And the board very closely followed the EAF workbooks and the seeker handbook in making its determinations.
I feel like we've had a very substantive and lengthy conversation on really, you know, on that issue in particular. I'll say at this moment. I think having heard that, and thank you both Amanda and Jaime for clearing those items. I think it's helpful for us as a board to hear.
I think
We
that
are still, yeah.
maybe we should hear from the applicant.
Right, I'm wondering, so procedurally, if we're still in a public hearing right now, if there's a reason to keep the public hearing open and while we hear from the applicant, because I do want to hear from the applicant on this.
It's up to you.
Yeah. So, you know, I think we've heard from folks who are here. I'm just mindful of going back and forth between public hearing and this conversation. So I think if the board agrees, my recommendation at this point would be to close the public hearing on the seeker process and adjourn the public hearing on the land use issues, if that makes sense. So maybe starting with let's start with the adjournment, which is what we did last time.
Eric Talbot, I'll make the motion to adjourn the land use items for this application, including do I need to say any more on that? And
No.
then I can make the motion to
Well, let's start with that motion.
Okay.
Yeah, let's start with the adjournment and the second.
Michael Aronson, second.
All right, are there any objections? There are no objections, so we're adjourning the land use public hearing. And then the next would be to close the public hearing on the SECRA negative declaration. Do we have a motion for that?
Eric Talbot, I make the motion to close the public hearing on the SECRA negative declaration.
Nina Aaron, second.
All right, and are there any objections? All right, with no objections, the motion passes. So we do have the applicants here and a lot has been said. You guys have been sitting there listening. So I think before we do anything, it would be important for us to hear from you, any responses you have.
Yes, thank you all. And I know that this is a difficult project as one of the, I think the second down in this broader area by the water, the much larger Ginsburg project being the first, I believe. You guys can certainly correct me if I'm wrong on that point, but we do recognize that, and we've worked very, very diligently to listen to and do our best to satisfy the concerns of the community. That said, the larger project that was originally proposed pursuant to SECRA was compliant. This smaller project is certainly compliant. I believe everything is before the board. In my 22 years as an environmental attorney, including work for the Riverkeeper and a heck of a lot of public interest work, and some of my greatest victories being opposing projects that I did not believe satisfied the demands of NEPA or SECRA. I have never seen a more transparent SECRA review process than that put forth by this board. In fact, as you can all recognize, we were frustrated by the degree to which we delved into issues that reasonably were non-issues. And I can't imagine a process that did not take a closer look, that did not examine issues as broadly as they could possibly be defined under the law or regulations or case law supporting them. And while I didn't thank you all for it at the time, I thank you for it now because it lays bare the appropriate nature of a negative declaration being issued tonight. We will reserve our remaining comments on some of the broader issues as to the inapplicability of the architectural guidelines to this particular street and what have you, as we suggested at the beginning of this meeting, such that we could focus on the neg deck and adjourn the rest, defer and adjourn the rest of the issues for another day.
I have to say this, and I appreciate what Ron said, but I need to point out one inconsistency. The first project was not zoning compliant. It required several variances, area variances. So so the public understands that we are aware. In fact, the first application was not compliant, although Mr. Steinberg stated that it was too tall and too many stories. So it needed those variances at the beginning. So just to clarify.
You were correct, and if I misspoke, I apologize. My point was we were seeker compliant, but you're correct, we were not entirely zoning compliant.
All right, thank you. So having had this discussion, I would like to ask the board members if you feel comfortable at this point, the lengthy review of the negative declaration that was prepared by Amanda and staff, and the conversations that we've had up until now. If there are any other comments, or if we feel like we're in a position to have a vote on the negative declaration that we reviewed and was prepared and was presented to the public.
Do you want to make it conditioned upon any minor ministerial changes, such as square footage being amended?
I think that's a reasonable condition. And yes.
Yes, I was just going to ask that works for me.
Yeah. Okay.
And for me.
Same here.
Okay. So then I would like to ask the board for a motion as to approve the negative declaration with the conditions just noted by Amanda.
Eric Talbot, I make the motion to approve the negative declaration with the condition being of revisions to the administrative elements to the application, including square footage of the commercial space. Is that correct? Sorry, I didn't get that.
Yeah,
right.
I'll record it as minor ministerial change.
Minor yes, thank you.
And a second.
Nina Aaron, second.
All right, and we will take a roll call.
Seth Roy.
Aye.
Michael Aronson.
Aye.
Nina Aaron.
Aye.
Eric Talbot.
Aye.
All right.
4-0.
4-0. All right, thank you. All right, so thank you to the applicant, and I guess we'll see you guys next time to go over some other items.
Happy and healthy holidays to everyone. Thank you very much.
You too.
To you. Okay, continuing on our agenda. Lost my sheet that I was using. Jaime, do you want to introduce the next agenda item?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna do this. Let me just pull it up real fast. Some good news, there are no other applications. Everything else is adjourned, but I think it would be wise to just quickly go through them all, if that's
Please.
okay.
I would, yes, please do that.
Give you a brief update. So the next application is 173, 175 North Highland Avenue. We had, I think, what was a very pleasant conversation today with the applicant and their consultants. And so I think that they're on a good path to getting all of their final details. We're hopeful that sometime later this week or early next week, we'll receive a final draft of their site plan, as well as all of the answers to the comments that had been provided to them from Keller Sessions, from the Keller Sessions memo. We do anticipate that they're going to be going to the EAC at the beginning of January. So hopefully if everything lines up, then you'll have comments from the EAC by the time you hear this application next. So they're going to have to renotice for the January meeting. But other than that, hopefully you'll have EAC comments, you'll have all the final full application comments. And then at that point, you should be pretty close to having everything you need to kind of make any final questions and make your determination for the multiple aspects of the project. So to clarify, there's a couple of site plan applications in there. There is a subdivision application in there. There are no BAR applications because the BAR applications were approved previously, so there are no changes there. And that's about it. So that's where we are with 173, 175 North Highland. 136, 140 Croton Avenue has received a significant amount of comments in the past couple of days. So I'd encourage the board to take a look at those comments. A lot of them came in today and yesterday or Sunday. So if you haven't had a chance, please do take a look at them. But there are several concerns from the community members. They are working on responding to comments from the DOT, which recently came in asking for some updated traffic counts, accident counts, and traffic data for the project, and trying to respond to some of the comments that they've received from the public about view angles, but have not as of yet submitted any updated details to us. I think that the community members, some of the community members have expressed that they've made comments and haven't seen anything back from the applicant. The applicant hasn't provided this board anything to take a look at, and so I did instruct, because the applicant reached out to me and asked whether they could share some of those items, and I instructed the applicant not to share any items with the general public prior to submitting them to the planning board, so that the planning board members could have them. I did that because I do not want there to be a second set of documents out in the public that hasn't been looked at by the planning board, so that the public would get confused or potentially there's some miscommunication that could happen. So to avoid that, I would rather that they submit to the planning board first, and at that point, once they've been submitted to the planning board, they can sort of share them with whoever they want. So that's where we are with that. We expect to see them back in January as well. For 4 State Street went in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. They requested, the ZBA requested that they provide them a more detailed parking analysis in that area. So they're currently working on that traffic study, and they'll be getting back to the zoning board, and depending on how the zoning board meeting goes at the beginning of the month, they may be back here in January as well. 31 Croton Avenue is an interesting application. So they initially came in under the form-based code. They were directed by me and at the advice of BFJ that it might make more sense for them to go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals and seek just use variances and area variances. As they started going through that process, they felt that it was kind of unreasonable that they wouldn't be able to get a use variance just based off of the hardship criteria. And so they have asked to go under the form-based code. I had informed them that we would look into see whether it was possible to kind of view this under 2 separate codes, similar to how the 136, 140 Croton Avenue was set up, but that's under the Croton Avenue district, not under the downtown overlay district. Amanda and her team reviewed the language of the code, and it's not really possible to kind of bifurcate those two. So you do have, if you're going to go with the form-based code, you have to sort of wholeheartedly go with all the aspects that are available to you under the form-based code, or you have to go under the NC2 code. So we now have to kind of commence a review under the form-based code to figure out, where it complies and where it doesn't, and sort of retool. So, unfortunately, it's been a challenge, I think, for them. A lot of that challenge comes from our process of trying to figure out how to make it work. So we're kind of back where we started a couple of months ago, but I have been in regular communication with the applicant. And, at this point, we're just going to have to try to figure out where it fits within the form-based code and figure out where the variances are necessary. And we'll have that answer for this board at the next meeting. But we don't have it today, unfortunately.
That's it.
Yeah, so those are the applications. There is one other item on the agenda. It was to a parking presentation, which talked about, amongst other things, recommendations that that were made by a traffic consultant on how to deal with some of the parking issues here in the village. Some of them relate to issues down in this area of 14 Water Street. I would ask that we defer discussion about this parking presentation until after the discussion about 14 Water Street is done. I think, it made sense in the moment to have this presentation today. I'm not so sure that, considering there's still, matters to discuss, that it makes sense to wait to hear some of, if there are any further comments from the community on this. And also, I just would recommend that the board members take a look at the presentation. It's about 50 slides or so. It's a very interesting presentation with a lot of really good recommendations, but it's going to take a few minutes for us to go through it. And I don't know if 10 o'clock at night is the right time to be going through it.
On the one hand, while I endorse that, I think it makes sense to wait and to resolve some of the other issues that are kind of tangentially related. But I will note that it'll, we have a long agenda in January and probably February too. But
yeah, I may come up with a different solution. We do have a recording of the presentation being given, so maybe what I'll do is just email out a recording of that presentation, and then we can sort of talk about it, rather than that way people can sort of watch the presentation at their leisure.
Yeah,
fun on a Sunday afternoon type thing. So.
I think that would be helpful, so we don't have to spend the time here late at night watching it, where it may be even more difficult to attend to. And then we can have a conversation at our next meeting. I think that's a good idea. And that ties in right with the conversation that we had last week in terms of recommendations to the board. And this becomes another point that we can refer to when we go to the board, as something that may have some good ideas in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one thing I would say is that, like, it's very clear. I think the planning board is very concerned about the parking issue down in Station Plaza, right? And it's a very serious issue. It requires a lot of thoughtful discussion to get to a good recommendation and a good letter that goes to the Board of Trustees. So I think it's worth taking the time. Staff feels, I think, just as strongly. I know I certainly do, that there are a lot of areas that could be fixed and a lot of things that need to be worked on, but we need to be mindful of the process for the applications that's in front of you, and try to sort of keep them separate until deal with them one at a time. That's just my recommendation.
Yeah, board members, you agree? We can push that to next week, next month.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
And thank you for the comments on keeping things separate.
Okay, and November 23rd minutes, do we?
I don't think we
Again,
saw them, did we?
I don't think we saw them either. That's what I'm looking at. That meeting was, yeah. No, we did
And
not.
I wasn't at that meeting, so you wouldn't have a quorum to vote on
There
it
you go.
anyway.
Okay.
Righty then.
There it is.
Both of those reasons. All right. Sounds good. All right. So I guess we can adjourn the meeting. I can't remember if we do an emotion to adjourn. I guess we do.
Yeah.
We have in the past.
You do.
Michael Aronson, motion to adjourn the meeting and to wish everybody a happy holiday.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Likewise.
Your Christmas present is a 3-hour meeting instead of a 5-hour meeting.
Do we have
Thank
a
you.
second on that motion?
Eric Talbot, second the motion.
All right. Any objections? The motion passes. Happy holidays, everybody. Thanks for
Yeah.
your patience tonight. This was a long one, but I think it was good.
You did a good job.
Take care,
Happy
everybody.
holidays.
Right.
Happy
Happy
holidays.
holidays.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Happy holidays.